My name is Kayla. I am 19 years old, and I want to tell you about the guy I matched with on Tinder who called me 53 times in a single hour. I thought he was having a breakdown. I thought maybe someone had broken into his house. I drove past his place that same night and saw police cars everywhere. He was not the one being attacked. He was the one doing the attacking. Subscribe before we get into this. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight, because I have 3 stories about what dating apps can lead you toward when you are not paying close enough attention. Let me start with mine. I was 19 and living outside a medium-sized city in Virginia. Rural area, not a lot going on. I was in community college working toward a nursing degree, and I was not exactly swimming in social opportunities. The partying scene was not for me. The guys I already knew were not guys I was interested in. Tinder seemed like the logical next step. The first month was rough. Mostly invitations. I had no interest in guys who were not subtle about what they wanted, a handful who tried to seem smooth but were not. I was close to deleting the app. Then I came across a profile that seemed different. He was not flashy or overtly forward. His bio was simple. He had a job. He had finished college. He came from what seemed like a decent family background. Nothing about his profile jumped out as extraordinary, but nothing alarmed me either. After the month I had just had on the app, ordinary felt like a relief. We met at a coffee shop in town, and from the first 20 minutes, I was genuinely surprised. He was warm, he was funny, he was clearly intelligent and had thought carefully about a lot of things. He looked better in person than in his photos, which almost never happens. I remember thinking that I had finally found what the app was supposed to be for. We ended up driving around for a couple of hours just talking. The conversation was easy and wide-ranging, and I found myself genuinely engaged in a way I had not expected. Then the subject shifted to government surveillance. I want to be fair about this. Plenty of reasonable people have genuine concerns about privacy and institutional oversight. That is not inherently alarming. But there is a spectrum between thoughtful concern and something else entirely, and within the first 5 minutes of the topic, I realized he was not on the thoughtful concern end of it. He believed things that did not connect to each other in ways I could follow. He could make a case from point A to point B, and the logic held, and then he would jump to a conclusion that was 30 steps past where the evidence had taken us. I tried gentle pushback a couple of times, and each time the response was disproportionate, a flash of irritation that he quickly brought back under control. I filed it under quirky and we moved on. By the time we had been on 2 or 3 dates, I had started asking around about him, not in a suspicious way, just the way you do when you are dating someone new in a town where most people know most people. I mentioned his name to a few friends and acquaintances. Nobody had met him. Nobody had heard of him. For someone who claimed to live in this town, he had left no social footprint that any of my contacts could confirm. Then one person I asked paused before answering. She said she had heard of someone by that name. She described an incident. He had been renting an apartment above a beauty salon in town, and one afternoon the people downstairs had heard violent stomping and shouting. She said it was not the sound of someone angry. She said it was the sound of someone working themselves up to something, and she said what he had been chanting over and over was "kill them." I dismissed it. I told myself this could not be the same person. The man I had been spending time with was composed and thoughtful and genuinely engaging. People get the wrong idea about others all the time. Rumors in small towns are not reliable data. I kept seeing him. I tried to hold the story lightly in the back of my mind as a data point rather than a verdict. I watched him across the next few dates for signs of what the story described. I did not see them. He was the same person he had been. Smart, a little intense about certain topics, but fundamentally normal seeming. On a Friday night after I had finished my homework for the week, he texted me asking if I wanted to come over. I was tired and not in the mood. I set the phone down and went to take a shower. When I came out, I had 53 missed calls. They were all from him, spread across the duration of my shower. He had also sent text messages, all of them the same sentence in capital letters. "I need your help right now," repeated over and over. My first thought was that something had happened to a family member. My second thought was that he was having some kind of episode. I called him back. He answered immediately and he sounded genuinely frightened. He said someone had broken into his house. He said he had heard a door smash open and found it wide open, and he believed whoever had come through it was still inside, hiding, waiting for him to lower his guard. I told him that if he had searched the house and not found anyone, then the most likely explanation was that no one was there. Maybe the door had blown open in the wind. Maybe he had not latched it properly. He would not accept this. He was certain. He kept telling me I needed to come over, that I needed to help him. I sat with the phone in my hand and thought about what he was asking me. He wanted a 19-year-old woman to drive to his house alone at night because he believed an intruder was hiding somewhere inside. I did not have a weapon. I had no particular training or ability to handle that situation. What he was asking made no logical sense as a safety measure. If he genuinely believed someone was in his house, the correct call was 911, not his Tinder date. I told him I could not come. I told him to call the police if he was afraid. The call continued and the requests continued, and they became more insistent, and I eventually told him I was not coming and ended the call. I blocked him on everything and tried to put it out of my head. I decided to watch a movie that night and treat the whole thing as a strange evening that was now over. My mom asked me to stop for cigarettes on the way out. The route to the store took me past his house. I almost turned around and took a different way. I was vaguely aware that driving past his house was not how I wanted to spend any part of this evening, but it was on the way and I was already in the car. When I got within a few hundred feet of his address, I saw the lights. Police cars, multiple of them, parked in front of and around his house with their emergency lights going. Officers in the yard, yellow tape. I pulled over. I sat in my car trying to understand what I was seeing. Someone had broken in. He had been right. He had been in danger and I had not gone, and something had happened. I got out of the car and walked toward the nearest officer and asked what was going on. He told me that the man who lived at this address had taken his mother hostage. He was inside right now. He was armed. It took a few seconds for the shape of that to land. He had not been in danger. His mother had been in danger. From him, the 53 calls, the insistence that I come over, the story about an intruder that kept him from answering when police arrived. All of it was him trying to get me to his house during what turned out to be a 3-day standoff between him and law enforcement while he held his own mother at gunpoint. I got back in my car and drove away. Nobody was seriously injured. The standoff ended after 3 days when he was taken into custody. He is in federal prison now. I think about that route home sometimes. The fact that taking a different road that night would have felt excessive. The fact that I almost did not pull over when I saw the lights. The fact that if I had gone when he first called me at whatever point during those 3 days, whatever happened to make his mother the target, I would have been inside that house. He called me 53 times in 1 hour, and every one of those calls was an attempt to get me through his front door. The second story. My name is Jessica. I am 24 years old, and I want to tell you about a man named Tyler who I kept seeing on Tinder even after I had swiped left on him multiple times, then blocked him, then matched with him from a different account on Facebook, and eventually drove to a strip mall parking lot on the edge of town to see what would happen if I showed up. I want to be honest about my own decision-making in this story, because part of what makes it useful is how clearly it illustrates the way curiosity can override better judgment. I was 21 when this started. Newly independent, newly out of a long relationship. in a phase of my life where I was consciously trying to be less careful and more spontaneous than I had always been. I had graduated early, moved out of my parents' house, started a new job at a local laboratory. I was trying to build a life that felt like mine. I used Tinder the way most people do, casually, scrolling while watching something on Netflix, swiping on whoever caught my attention, occasionally matching and having a conversation that went somewhere, and mostly having conversations that did not go anywhere. The first time I saw Tyler's profile, I swiped left immediately. Not because of any specific thing, the cumulative impression of the photo. The face had a particular quality to it that I did not have a precise word for. He looked like someone who would not take no for an answer. Long black hair that looked like it had not been washed recently. An expression that was not quite angry, but was not friendly either. I swiped left and forgot about it. Then a few days later, there he was again. Same profile, same photo, same name. I looked up whether Tinder recycled profiles. The answer was inconclusive. It was technically possible if you had swiped through everyone in your area, but I lived outside a mid-sized city, and I had not been on the app long enough or frequently enough to exhaust the local pool, and he was the only repeat. Not occasionally seeing familiar faces, just him over and over, while everyone else was new. Over the following weeks, his profile appeared several more times. I matched with him once specifically to block him, thinking that would resolve whatever algorithmic loop was showing him to me. He appeared again the next day. I started to feel genuinely unsettled in a way I could not fully articulate. Not afraid exactly. More like the particular discomfort of noticing a pattern that should not exist and not being able to explain it. Then he sent me a friend request on Facebook. I do not use Facebook frequently. I had not checked it in about a week when I saw the request. The profile photo was the same one from Tinder. He had found me across platforms without any crossover information I could identify. I had not linked my social media to my Tinder profile. I did something I cannot fully defend. I accepted the request to see what he would do. He messaged me within minutes saying he had seen me on Tinder. Before we had exchanged more than a handful of messages, he was asking what restaurant I wanted to go to for our first date. Not whether I wanted to go on a date. Which restaurant? I told him I had decided not to pursue dating anyone right now and was not interested in meeting up. He said I was lying. Then he started making threats. Not physical threats at first, more like promises of what he intended to do and what he was going to get. Some of the language was explicitly sexual. Some of it was something harder to categorize, a cold certainty about how things were going to go that was more unsettling than overt aggression. I should have blocked him immediately. I did not block him immediately. And here is where I have to be honest with myself about why. There was something about the whole situation that I had been treating as interesting. The repeated Tinder appearances, the cross-platform contact, the presumption. I had been engaging with it as a puzzle rather than a threat. I wanted to understand what he was. I agreed to meet him in the parking lot of a strip mall in town. I told myself it was just to see, that I would sit in my car and get a look at him before he saw me and then drive away if anything seemed wrong. That I was in control of the situation because I had decided the terms of it. I pulled into the parking lot and sat at one end of it watching. He was there before I arrived, leaning against a car about 6 spaces from the entrance. Even from that distance, even through my windshield, the impression the photo had given me was accurate and then worse. He was taller than I had expected. The car behind him was the most specific detail I remember. It was badly rusted, visibly damaged in multiple places, the kind of car that communicates a lot about its owner without saying a word. On the driver's side door, painted or sprayed in rough letters, was the word "Death Trap." I sat in my car and looked at him and looked at that car, and then I left. I drove out the way I had come in slowly enough that it would not look like what it was, and then faster once I turned onto the main road. I blocked him on Facebook before I reached the next light. I deleted my Tinder profile when I got home. I have thought about that parking lot many times since. About the 45 seconds I sat there watching him before I decided to leave. About the way the car with death trap on the door made the whole picture suddenly clear in a way the Tinder profile and the Facebook messages had not quite managed on their own. I met my current partner a few months after that night. We have been together for 2 years and the relationship is genuinely good. That probably does not happen if I had gotten out of the car. I do not know what Tyler wanted. I do not know what the repeated Tinder appearances were about or how he found me on Facebook. I just know what the car looked like, and I am glad I did not get out. The third story. My name is Marcus. I am 24 years old, and I want to tell you about my friend Angela and the man she was dating from Tinder, who I had a bad feeling about from the first time I met him. I was right about the feeling. I found out how right I was from a Google search that took about 4 minutes. Angela and I had been close for a couple of years. Our mothers worked together and the friendship had developed from there. She was a few years older than me and was raising 2 kids largely on her own after her marriage ended badly. She was bright and funny and genuinely good company. She also had a lot going against her in the practical sense. Single parent, limited income, 2 young kids, not a lot of free time. The deck was not stacked in her favor when it came to dating. She found someone on Tinder who seemed remarkable. Attractive, employed no obvious red flags in the early conversations. When she described him to me, I remember thinking that the combination of qualities she was listing did not quite add up for someone who had chosen to pursue a single mother with 2 kids. I kept that thought to myself the first time, and the second. When I met him in person, the feeling got stronger rather than weaker. He was performing. I do not mean that in an accusatory way. Everyone presents a version of themselves when meeting the friends and family of someone they are dating. But there is a difference between putting your best foot forward and actively constructing a character for the occasion. Everything he said was calibrated. Every response landed at the right pitch. He was effortlessly charming in a way that, past a certain point, stops feeling natural and starts feeling practice. He told Angela he did not believe in social media. He said he had never had Facebook, had no Instagram, did not think any of it was healthy. Angela mentioned it to me almost as a charming quirk. He was refreshingly offline, she said. I remember thinking that a person who had no social media presence at all either had very good reasons for that or was hiding something. He had been presented to me as the former. I Googled his name. The first page of results was thin, which itself was notable for someone in his late 20s. Most people leave some kind of trail. Then I found a Facebook profile, not active, but public, and on it were posts. I am going to be careful about how I describe what I found, because the specifics are not something I want to put into detail here. What I can tell you is that there were posts within the previous year arguing in explicit terms that age was not a meaningful barrier to certain kinds of relationships. Multiple posts on the same theme, part of a community of people who shared this position and discussed it openly. Angela had young kids. He had already watched them alone. I took screenshots of everything I could find before I went to Angela. I knew I could not go to her alone. She had been dismissive of my concerns before, and I knew that arriving with accusations against someone she cared about and wanted to believe in was going to produce a predictable defensive response. I brought her mother. Her mother's reaction removed any ambiguity from the situation. Angela was devastated. Not because she did not believe what she was seeing, the screenshots were clear, but because she had wanted very much to believe that someone with everything going for him had chosen her and had no ulterior motive. She had eaten it up, she said. She had been willing to eat it up. She ended the relationship. She went to the police and filed a report. She asked her kids the right questions and determined with relief that she described to me as the most significant relief of her life that nothing had happened. I do not know what became of the investigation. I do not know what he told the police or what the outcome was. What I know is that he was attractive and well-employed and socially polished and had specifically chosen to pursue a relationship with a financially struggling single mother with young children, and had told her he did not believe in social media while maintaining a public Facebook profile that contained a clear record of his actual interests. And the only thing that stopped it from going further was 4 minutes on Google. 3 stories tonight. Kayla, who thought her date was in danger and found out he was the danger. Me, who sat in a parking lot for 45 seconds and made a decision that I am grateful for every single day. And Marcus, who found out what a 4-minute Google search can tell you about a person that no amount of pleasant dinner conversation ever would. Kayla's guy called her 53 times. The desperation in that number is a signal. That is not how someone behaves when they need help. That is how someone behaves when they need a specific person in a specific place, and they will not stop until they get it. Tyler kept appearing on her phone because someone in that situation does not stop when you block them. They find another way. They always find another way. And Angela's guy had no social media because that was how he managed what he did not want found. The internet is a tool. Dating apps are a tool. They are neutral in themselves. What they cannot do is replace the kind of judgment that comes from paying attention, from noticing the thing that does not quite add up, from sitting in a parking lot and looking at a car with a word spray painted on the door and choosing to drive away. Pay attention to the things that do not fit. They are usually trying to tell you something.